A quick little disclaimer before we begin. This video was scripted months before KH4 was announced, so if you wanted to hear some stuff about that in this video, then you'll be disappointed to know that that info will not be shared here. That said though, this video will contain spoilers for many of the Kingdom Hearts games that are mentioned in this video. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy. Well, that last Kingdom Hearts related article took a bit to get to. My big assignment is not yet finished, so I'll prepare for my travels in the meantime. The train should be here in around 3 to 5 minutes maybe? Later than that? Good thing I have some travel appropriate material. And it's another bad piece of gaming journalism. Goody. Hola amigos, Raven Pines here with a brand new commentary. So remember that really awful Kingdom Hearts article from Game Rant that I covered a while back? Well, looks like we have another one. However, instead of the author comparing two completely different game franchises to each other to make a point about how one should be like the other, narrative-wise, we have an article from TheGamer, or more specifically, Stacey Henley. The article is titled, Imagine if Kingdom Hearts was good. I'm sorry, but I gotta say it. This article is garbage, and here's why.
I've seen every Walt Disney Animation Studios movie. Yes to Los Amigos. Yes, Make My Music. Yes, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. All of them means all of them. That last one is secretly the scariest movie Disney has ever made, even more than The Black Cauldron, which yes, I've also seen. I even used to have that one on VHS. None of this is to brag. It feels more like a shameful confession in truth, but to caveat what I'm about to write, or given that you've all presumably read the headline first when I've already written, I'm a fully fledged Disney adult. I love Disney. Disney is not what's wrong with Kingdom Hearts. But make no mistake, Kingdom Hearts sucks. I don't say this lightly. In some ways, it's a phenomenal achievement. For all Kingdom Hearts flaws, it never feels silly. You and your massive feet could be running around Tarzan's jungle waving your big key around, then hop on a spaceship to fight off Cerberus with Hercules and Cloud Strife by your side, and it flows seamlessly. It deserves credit for linking all of these different ideas together, but that's about all it deserves credit for.
I like how this article starts off in a really pretentious way. That totally won't potentially make the reader feel like absolute shit from the get-go. Next time, please tell us you've seen every anime series, including Shonen, to preface your opinion that Demon Slayer is absolute dog shit and make people feel ashamed for liking it. That'll bring in the clicks. In all seriousness though, if anyone starts any opinion piece off with garbage like this, chances are their credibility is officially making like Tinkerbell and flying out the window. This is not how you open an opinion piece, especially in major news websites dedicated to video games. To anyone wanting to make opinion pieces on any venue regarding any topic, you might want to avoid coming off as dickish from beginning to end for the sake of making other people angry. Instead, try to acknowledge people who don't have the same opinion that you do and just be more respectful about it. That way, you won't end up making your audience feel like they're idiots for liking something that you don't, or vice versa. Well, guess we're taking this on the railroad, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Moving right along.
The House of Mouse might be a soulless capitalist machine, but it makes damn good movies. Because I watched them all, I know it has some duds, but Kingdom Hearts picks the elite. It leans on the likes of Toy Story and Frozen and Aladdin, rather than Fun and Fancy Free or Meet the Robinsons. These are some of Disney's finest, most heartfelt stories, and as a result, they're some of the most heartfelt stories in the history of film. There is some justified resentment over Disney buying up anything that moves, and some unjustified snobbery towards the childish nature of cartoons, but few would argue that Toy Story 3 is a bad or even an average movie.
So you don't like the fact that Tetsuya Nomura and his team work with worlds that are only from Disney's most notable movies and not films that are not as well known as Aladdin, Frozen, and Toy Story. Okay then, I'm gonna go ahead and play devil's advocate for Nomura and his team not adding these films into the game, since there are possibilities as to why that may be the case. Maybe Nomura and his team didn't know about these movies at the time. Maybe they wanted to add these movies initially to the first game, but just didn't know how to work around those, especially given the case with the original characters in the story. Maybe Disney didn't give them approval to use these movies for the game. Or maybe they decided not to add these movies because that would require more world building than necessary and it would make the game feel really cluttered. Either way, when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, you kinda have to lower your expectations of what worlds you see in these games and the story itself. Otherwise, that'll lead you to being disappointed. Also, I find it pretty funny that you mentioned Toy Story. Here's a fun fact. According to the Kingdom Hearts wiki, the proposal folder shown to Buena Vista included plans for a world based on Toy Story before they got scrapped because Pixar was not owned by Disney at that point in time. In an interview from Kingdom Hearts 3 Ultimania, Nomura mentioned that they made a few trial models of characters from Monsters Inc. and Toy Story during the production of KH2 before they had to shelve them. He even said in the interview, and I quote, "I felt I couldn't make KH3 without including Pixar works, since after KH2 was released, Disney purchased Pixar." Aside from what I just mentioned, we also have to take into account how successful these three movies are, financially speaking. During the original releases for each of the three movies, the worldwide gross is pretty high for both Toy Story and the animated Aladdin movie. However, Frozen's worldwide gross is higher than the two movies I mentioned earlier, especially when we take how much of a phenomenon Frozen was at the time and how marketable it was back then and still is now into account. As you can guess, my friends, this is capitalism at its finest. I'll explain why the Disney aspect is essential to the series later on.
The same is true of Final Fantasy. The property Square Enix has married to Disney throughout Kingdom Hearts. No self-respecting list of the most important titles in our medium's history is complete without Final Fantasy VII, and a large part of that stems from the character relationships, especially the rivalry between Cloud and Sephiroth. All the ingredients are there, yet time and time again, Kingdom Hearts manages to be less than the sum of its parts. Kingdom Hearts is famously, or infamously, convoluted. It has become a meme unto itself, and while it's natural that a JRPG made by Square Enix and intertwined with Final Fantasy would feel somewhat tangled, wahey, Disney movies are beloved because of their simplicity. Even when they tackle complex themes in layered ways, as movies like Frozen and The Hunchback of Notre Dame do, there is a human simplicity at their core. Kingdom Hearts boots that idea out the door and runs in a complete opposite direction.
¿Qué? ¿Una franquicia de videojuegos que combina Final Fantasy y Disney en una historia original con personajes originales? Esto no puede ser real! On another note, the story isn't as complicated to follow as you make it out to be. In fact, there are some Disney movies with stories that aren't really simple to follow either, such as Alice in Wonderland and The Black Cauldron. Alice in Wonderland's plot goes all over the place, especially when you consider the fact that this is an animated adaptation of the Lewis Carroll novel with the main character trying to figure out what is going on and the meaning to all the nonsense she is seeing. The only difference between that and The Black Cauldron is that it appeals to all audience members, young and old alike, but The Black Cauldron tried to appeal to older audiences and failed miserably, especially with the plot of that particular movie being a lot more complicated than necessary. With KH in particular, you can sum up the Xehanort Union plotline in one sentence. The more good he tried doing, the worse and more dark it ended up being because of its methods, which led him to darkness. Like, sure, it's complex, but that's what we get. Slightly off topic, but are we also forgetting that some of the characters in The World Ends With You made an appearance in Dream Drop Distance? Yeah! Tweewee! Another Square Enix IP. Actually, now that I mentioned Tweewee, let's talk about that for a bit. With the story, it takes its time to establish the Reaper system, people's wishes, and it takes time to make everything feel compact. That's essentially what KH is doing with their past arc, especially with KH3. And here's something that I didn't mention in my Game Rad video. This and the other article I mentioned earlier seem to mix complexity with indescribability. What do I mean? Well, Kingdom Hearts does have a really complex plot with a lot to take in if you pay attention, but it's not as indescribable as, say, BlazBlue, for instance. And this is coming from someone who hasn't played BlazBlue yet.
Kingdom Hearts either eats itself alive with lore, which is way too thick to draw any emotions from its audience unless they have several binders to help keep up with what's happening, or it reduces some of the best stories in cinema to, boy, I sure am glad friendship is important. I'm not kidding when I say I wish it was good. A game that mixes the stories of Disney's best tales together should be extremely my jam. I miss the old tie-in games for the PS1s. I miss Hercules and Tarzan. I got every achievement in the Pixar Brave game. I unironically love Disney and I would unironically love a Disney game. I don't need Kingdom Hearts to do an Iron Man world or Star Wars world. I just need it to be good. Please. How can it waste these ingredients time and time again and just get away with it?
Kingdom Hearts doesn't draw emotions from the audience, eh? Well, how do you explain this?
Sora. You're lucky. Looks like my summer vacation's over.
This...
Take care, okay? Right back at you, buddy.
And this!
Go on, you just keep running. But I'll always be there to bring you back!
Also, really? You're comparing Kingdom Hearts, a game that has an original story with original characters mixed with the established Disney IPs, to games that are straight adaptations of their movies. Good grief. I guess now would be a good time to explain why the Disney aspect is essential to the games. First, I'll cover this in an angle from a kid's perspective, or a fan's perspective. You see, when we think of the many worlds of Disney we wish to explore as children, what do we usually think of? Lots of people might say the Pride Lands, Agrabah, Neverland, or even Halloween Town. Even if we take the worlds from the equation, we also gotta consider kids imagining what it would be like interacting with their favorite characters, especially in video game form. It is possible for a kid's imagination to spark because of it, even without the Kingdom Hearts games. Sure, they may not understand the plot of the games and even the mechanics at first, but they might get some enjoyment out of it, even visiting the worlds that they really wish to go to and meeting some of their favorite characters along the way. Hell, even teens and adults could have a good experience with it too. That all depends on what they enjoy most, really.
My dogs won't stop moving, and I can't be bothered to wait for them to stop moving, but hey, it's the cringy editor of this video. It'll just be for the remainder of this interjection, but if I just kept editing this interjection normally, I would never have gotten it done, so I'm just gonna replace it with whatever game footage I have on my computer for the rest of this interjection, even if it looks jarring as all hell. Just because I would never get it done otherwise.
Now, onto the creation and business side of things. Of course, everyone familiar with the game's history would know that the pitch for the first game all started with a chance meeting between Shinji Hashimoto and a Disney executive in an elevator, since Square Enix and Disney previously worked together in the same building in Japan. There's also the fact that the name of the game came from Nomura thinking about the Disney theme parks in Florida, especially the Animal Kingdom. When they couldn't get the IP with just Kingdom alone, that was when the name Kingdom Hearts was established. Even when taking the commercial and critical success of the series into account, the games can give the fans more of what they love most while also having the money put back for the developers and publishers. As I have stated when I talked about the collection sets in my Calm on Game rant, stuff like that works from a fan and business perspective. If you want to know more about the behind the scenes of the first game and why Sora was put in a Smash roster, there is a video that goes in depth with that kind of stuff. A link to that will be in the description. The point is, without Disney giving Square the freedom to use the IP for the games, or even without that pitch meeting in said elevator, we wouldn't have gotten the series we know and still play today, and we wouldn't have gotten so many worlds in the series to explore. If this tangent is long...
In a way, it's like those old tie-in games. I played the Hercules game over and over, despite the fact that it was a bit naff. I loved it anyway. A lot of people seem to get in on the ground floor with Kingdom Hearts as kids, and now they're trapped in the elevator as it ascends further and further into mediocrity. I wish it was good. I want a real Disney game. A Disney game that understands the source material and offers a new way to explore it. Disney Infinity got closer than Kingdom Hearts ever has. Take away the Disney and there's a decent JRPG with a range of interesting mechanics, but it's a Disney game. You can't take away the Disney and expect me to judge it at face value. Imagine if it was good though. Just imagine.
There's no heaven. Oh, right. Correction. Kingdom Hearts isn't a straight-up JRPG. Sure, it was made in Japan. However, it is a hack-and-slash action RPG. I know this is a slight nitpick at the end of the day, but like I said in my commentary on Gumdrop Animator, at least get your facts straight before saying something. Also, Disney Infinity is not the best example here, since that is Disney's version of Skylanders. You know, the toy-to-life game that had everyone talking for a while. The article basically just ends here, and with all that said and done, the Heartless are gone, and the balance between light and darkness is now restored. I'll be honest with you guys, this might not be the worst gaming article I've ever covered, but by God, it was still bad. the pretentiousness of it all that sours the reading experience. The way it misses the point about why Disney is integral to Kingdom Hearts. And the biggest downfall is the fact that it feels like a troll article. An article made to make people angry. Here's a lesson to the people watching at home. When in doubt, look over your opinion piece to make sure it is civil and that you have at the very least done some research on what you are talking about. That way we don't have a repeat of this. That's all I have for this video. Until next time, this is Raven Pine saying take care and be kind to one another. Adios! Man, I am so beat from all the traveling. I'll just take a rest for a while.